All right, welcome everyone. We have a world first here for NRL Fantasy Analysis. Lockie has been on before, but this is him. A lot of you may know him in the Discord group, but I will be letting him introduce himself here. But definitely a very interesting video. We're going to be going through our top guns in each position. Ready for the run home is going to be the most important thing. A few different things we'll speak about, obviously, but I'll let Lockie introduce himself now. If you're in the Discord group, you know who he is. There you go, Lockie. The floor is yours.
G'day guys, I'm Lachlan, or you might know me as Scoop. I do some deep dives and then general jumping around the server and having a chat to you guys.
There you go. Just a little bit around your fantasy background, Lockie, would be great if you can do that.
I joined Fantasy about 4 or 5 years ago. I think the first year under the new 21-man system. Had good fun. Never finished with a really great rank because I always find one or two great things to stuff up on each year, but it's still good fun.
Don't we all? Very, very tough to get in that top 100, that's for sure. I can't believe how good the people score went last year and same this year.
It's going amazing.
And Lockie runs that as well, guys, when we're trying to work out the trades for the week. And the last bunch of weeks has been funny with everyone like, yeah, I want Matty Bird and Cotter or something. It's like, yeah, well, you're trying to trade out Davy Moali and a 500k player. So organising that week to week has been great. But then also for Scooby as his Scoop Deep Dive. So if you are in the Discord and haven't been seeing that, he's been doing some big long articles around, just diving into the analytics for a random different stat each week or things like that. And did a video last week, and that's the reason he's on here with me today. I've been wanting to do a little bit of bringing some people on. Obviously, you guys enjoy hearing my voices, so you wouldn't come back on and watch these all the time. But I think it's gonna be nice to get a different perspective today. So all this Word document that we've got here, Lockie's put together around his sort of topics and potentially a second, because we've got Hooker here, we've got the honourable mentions, for example. But I'm going to go through 4 to 5, 6 players in each position, and hopefully a little bit of debate as to who we think's the best, and go from there. Hopefully help you guys out a lot. So Lockie, take the floor with our hooking position.
All right, so straight off, there's the top two big dogs off the bat. You've got Cook and Grant. Most of us have at least one of these two. And if you've picked Cook, you've probably turned out better with the amount of games that Grant has missed. Cook's been absolutely on fire recently and has pushed his price all the way up past 900k. As you can see, last 3 average over 70. He does have a tough run home, and last year he did miss the last match of the year, which could really hurt your head-to-head grand final. But Souths are sort of borderline in the top 8 this year, and I think Cook might be needed for that last round, so don't worry too much about that. Just you're sort of buying him for his points right now. If you're head-to-head and don't need to worry about Origin, get him as soon as you can. If not, hope he loses a couple of minutes and a couple of points in round 18 and pick him up at a tiny bit of a discount in round 19 for the run home if you've got the cash.
We'll jump in. That makes a lot of sense with him definitely a good chance of playing that last game because last year they were top 4, correct? 4th, 3rd or 4th?
Yeah, I think they were top 4, yeah, and then they made the grand final.
Yeah, and you'll see this with you saw this with Teddy last year. He played he decided to back up a little bit more just with them not being a 1 or 2 team. So Cook obviously played round 14 and did really well also. So if you could even look to pick him up in that round 18 as well. And then hopefully we'll play the last bunch of rounds. And generally, there's obviously some positions where I think that run home will matter in terms of a tougher finish. And I think the hooking position will say the mids and edges to an extent. Obviously, potential for try scoring against the lesser teams, but we're looking for more the backs and potentially the halves for their runs home, which we'll obviously speak about as well. So I think Cook's clearly the top reason, person to pick at 905, but why would we select Grant, Lockie?
Grant's been really solid. His average looks a lot worse than Cook's, 59.1, 7 points less, but a lot of that has come recently with Origin affected and coming back from that groin injury that he was sort of carrying for a couple of weeks there and went missing. So he's actually had a couple of really low scores recently before bouncing back with a 63 last week, and one of those was a really low 33 against the Panthers with a really un-Grant-like 10 missed tackles. Yeah. So if you can't stretch up to a Cook and you could use that 150k elsewhere, I think Grant will get a lot closer to Cook than he has overall so far. It won't be 7 points difference. I think it might be 2, 3, 4 points instead. And with that 150k, you can do something like a tailor-made to a Tedesco or a Pappenhausen if you really need to strengthen up a different position.
That's definitely a great call there. And yeah, Big Will kind of speaking beforehand around that team value. And if you're someone that's trying to make a bit of a run at the top guys, then it might be going for a slightly cheaper guy like Harry. Or we could potentially mention a couple other guys like Reece Robson and those types of players that aren't all the way up above 800 that have the potential to hit close to a 60 average and get somewhere near Cook. And you can spend that money elsewhere, like you said. That's a really good option down below with the Taylor Mays, the Crichtons, the Tungals, those types of players that you could upgrade to those top guys down the line. So that's definitely perfect there on the hookers. Anyone else you want to mention? We mentioned obviously Robson, but
both Robson and Cotter are the only ones that can sort of challenge that. Robson has had a lot of tries, but he's still quite close to both of them. I think his average is just about 60. Cotter, however, he's got a long-term injury. You can't pick him up for quite a while yet, and I just worry that if you pick him up straight away again, he might have a little bit of a slow comeback. So I'd pick him up as like pretty much your very last trade if he starts going well, like your last big trade in round 22, 23 sort of a thing if he starts going well again.
Perfect. Yeah.
He's also got the dual mid, so he could be slotted into your mid as well.
Yeah, because we'll be looking around 21 maybe, or 2021.
Yeah, somewhere around there. It's after Origin 3 anyway.
We'll see if anyone has a decent amount of trades left to make that one. But he could be one that, because over that last period, we're obviously going to have a longer season, means injuries, means suspensions. And if he can come back at that time and you've got him for a straight swap for one of your guns, and that's probably the way to get Cotter, I'd say, at that point. All right, Mr. Scoop, we move to the mids, and this is a very interesting section, the mids and the edge. We obviously got a few guys with dual positions, but we'll speak about some of the clear top mid options there. If you want to kick us off again.
Yeah, well, the mids have been a bit funny recently because there's been a lot of really high up guys that have fallen off over the last couple of rounds. So the only one that sort of is head and shoulders above the rest now is Murray, 64, nearly 65 average, and he's got some hard teams with big minutes coming along. He's just, to me, he's the standout mid for the run home and basically the top option. If you're head to head, you can grab him now before he climbs a little bit more, or round 18 or 19 for overall. Haas, you're going to have to get Haas back in at some point. He's just going to be too cheap to ignore for what we know he can do. The problem is he's got 2 dud shoulders now, so it's really hard to figure out when to time that. Do you get him in as soon as he starts scoring well? Do you let him go for a round or two to make sure it isn't a fluke? Because he has been getting reasonably good minutes. I think he actually got like 60 the other week, but his PPM is quite down. I just think he'll probably sneak into the top guys for the run at home. I just think that because he's so cheap, he's going to be one of 3 you're going to have, especially with those salary cap limitations.
We'd say another high break even gets him, let's just say, a decent score of 50, which has been averaging close to it the last bunch. Might get him about 670, potentially around 18 or 19.
Yeah, I think that's
him at like a 47, 48 average, which for Payne Haas is, even with the shoulders, is still ridiculously low, right? So again, one of those guys, if you have a lower team value, that you could pick him up, or again, a straight swap for an injury in round 19, 20 as well. If you've already got a bunch of really big guns, which we'll speak about in some of the honourable mentions as well. If you've got a few of those guys, it could just be a straight swap at that point, or as you said, a nice upgrade. But yeah, crazy to see him under a 50 average. I don't think we've seen that in a long time.
You're accustomed to seeing him high 800s, 900. To see him under 700 is kind of a bit surreal.
Yeah. Do you own him still?
I sold him too late. I had to wait until that bad game. I was so mad at all the people who sold him at 900, and I was like, no, just hold on, he'll be right. And then he had to go. It was such a shame.
Yeah, that's
but
his that game too. I think he was close to a point a minute.
Yeah, his other partner in
attacking stats, hey?
Yeah, a little bit. He just needs to get that shoulder fully right before he can be a bit more expansive, bust a few more tackles and offloads and stuff like that.
He's still playing big minutes in Origin. Ridiculous.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So we'll see how he goes tonight, I suppose. Will be a big factor. That's for the next few
weeks.
Yeah,
that'll be great.
Yeah. And then we got
Yeah,
Paddy Carrigan.
yeah, his partner in the Fords for the Broncos, with Haas sort of not running at peak efficiency. Carrigan is one of those workhorses, a bit like Cotter, who'll just shoulder that load and carry the Broncos a little bit. With Haas having issues lately, he's been doing massive minutes, like high 60s and sort of 70 minutes around there. And if he continues that, I think he'll be one of the top options, especially in the next 5-6 rounds. If he sort of dips a little bit as Haas comes good, he might not be the best, but it's hard to sort of pick the mids at the moment with guys like Clemmer being hurt by man returning and Cotter just being injured and things like that. So I think Carrigan is a really good buy. One person who I didn't mention there for some reason because I haven't got him in my team and kind of forgot about it is McInnes. McInnes, if you got him early, is really good. Made you easily 100K and being pretty much a top gun that you want in your mids. However, I was waiting for that Finucane return, and as you can see, straight away he went back down 50 minutes and 39. If you haven't got him, I would watch him really closely in round 16 before trying to pick him up for round 17. However, if he goes back to normal and high minutes, high points, he'll probably be one of the top mids you'll want, maybe even over Carrigan. But at the moment, with that uncertainty, I'm not 100% on bringing him into your team.
Yeah, that 50 minutes was a big worry for me, having being an owner of him, because he was close to a 60 average before that. So definitely, I agree. I'll wait and see on this week. You're not gonna, even if he gets a 60, his break even's high enough. You're not gonna lose any potential gains on him. So round 17 could be the potential pickup. We'll see how we go, Blake. But Finucane playing in the middle, it's just going to be based on their bench, right, as to what kind of minutes are going to be around. And because McInnes can easily, he's played the big minutes, he can easily play the 60, 65, and we need that from him for him to score in that mid 50s, which is what we want. And really like the points on Carrigan. Obviously, you've got in honourable mentions here Isaiah Yeo. Obviously, a little bit more expensive, but not ridiculous. The 60 average, you said he's boosted by a few tries, but the Carrigan one, that last 357, but he's someone who's actually improving week to week. You can tell, like, obviously in Origin, he killed it. And we saw in his first year when they named him captain, or pretty much captain as a rookie, and he was playing the 80 minutes, and him and Haas were like the two must-haves. So if he can continue those 70 minutes, like you're seeing with Murray, with the big minutes, they're just workhorses, and he can average 60 for sure. So I definitely agree with that pick. You get him at a slight discount. But yeah, it's just waiting. See how he goes here. If he probably picks up an injury or something and makes it a bit tough. But we mentioned here, probably the interesting one for me is Joey Tarpany in your honourable mentions. You want to have a little chat about him?
Yeah, Tarpany is a bit of a funny one because a couple of the Raiders lately have just been absolutely killing it. Young, Tarpany, and Elliott. Tarpany is available in the mids, and he busted out into basically everybody's notice when he scored that 94 the other week, but he hadn't scored below 50 since round 10 or so, and he really just looks like he's in absolutely top form and a keeper to bring in now. Unfortunately, because of that 94, he's now skyrocketed straight up to nearly 800K, and you're buying him at a premium for that premium. So with a little bit of attached risk that we've seen him score big before, but not sort of this consistently for this long, a little bit like Young. If you're going for a pod option, he's great, but I wouldn't probably bring him in at the moment unless you're head-to-head with the uncertainty plus doesn't play around 17.
Yeah, that's fair. I probably think, personally, he's going to average similar to Carrigan, and you get him at a higher price and a little bit more inconsistent. So if you're someone that hates riding with he played 45 minutes on the weekend, like played awesome, but he might get a 40 and he'll go out and get a 70. Whereas Carrigan, you're pretty well expecting to get 50 to 60 every week. So based on probably your temperament, the Adam Elliott one's so cool for those that own him. He could potentially become a keeper. The minutes has been incredible. So that's where we've got to watch, is if he can keep those mid-60s minutes, then his work ethic's great enough, and he has a little bit of footwork and some attacking flair. So he could be someone that you actually, even though he's gone up a lot in price, and if he continues to get what he's been given minutes-wise, it is sticky though. That's the thing. There's two Raiders guys we're talking about, and I spoke about Tarpany. My little funny skit the other day was about losing the minutes, and he did. He lost like 15, 20 minutes on the weekend. Still scored well, but yeah. And then anything about Clemmer, or happy to just go? He's a decent option and leave it at that.
Clemmer was an interesting one because with Man, he sort of scores a little bit worse, and I wasn't sure why at first because he actually has a similar PPM until this last week. He just gets less minutes. But in round 15, he got 64 minutes. So that's really good signs. It's just slightly uncertain that is that an anomaly in his PPM, or was Man hurting his time and role and tackles and things like that in the middle?
Yeah. So that was the best thing. It just didn't get the attacking stats this week. So it's, again, there's probably a little bit of uncertainty, and it's like, well, we want the complete certainty, right? Which is hard to get in this game. But, and especially, actually an interesting one, we've moved to the edges now, and Papali'i is obviously the clear top guy. But you were talking about buying, Tarpany at a premium, and obviously he's scoring that way at the moment. But if you're buying someone that high and they happen to have a few lighter weeks, which we've seen with Isaiah, there's definitely a right time to buy someone. Can you explain that theory a little bit?
Yeah, Papali'i's been an absolute star this year, but the last month he's dropped off a fair bit. And if you actually look at where he's been playing in the middle a bit. He's listed as playing second row in round 11. But he actually came off for Paulo. So he was in the middle rotation, and in those 4 games he got 51, 65, 50, 49. That's still keeper level easily, but for somebody who can average 60, 65 like he has been earlier this year, he's really going to drop in price. And if you really want him for round 17, you shouldn't get him before. And if you aren't going to get him for round 17, wait until he either goes back to second row where he scores a bit better, or till he's bottomed out a lot lower, like a 750k or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good call. The only, if the worry about if you were to wait that little bit longer is I'm noticing that probably not a lot of keeper guns playing in round 17, and he's obviously one of those guys. So that'd probably be the main reason why you look to just lock him up in 17, even if he does have the higher break even. He might be down around the 810, 805, but he should go back to the edge. They do have a lot of middles, right? So, you look on their bench, and Madison's playing a lot, a bit through the edge, a bit through the middle, and they've got even Nathan Brown on the bench, who's a middle. So, he should get back to that edge. I think they play better as a team as well. He's scoring tries. They're a lot more lethal. So he should see him back there at some point, but it might be just waiting until that 17, copping that little bit of a loss in terms of the price, but locking in that 50 to 60, which he should pick up in 17 with not many options in that round 17 for guns. Like, are there many at all? Like, there was heaps in round 13, especially for the forwards. But and then even a few of the guys we're thinking about in round 17, like not scoring as well, like the Jerome Hughes and these types of guys, which we'll talk about as well as we go along. But let us know about Madison as well. What are your thoughts there?
I sort of refused to buy him and regretted it because of his low minutes, but he just kept pumping it out. He's like early season Max King, but with way more minutes. Yeah. He's had a bit of a reduction of minutes in round 14 after Origin, but he's been left out of this one, if I remember correctly. So he is looking more likely that he might actually play round 17. And if he is, you just have to have it. Yeah. He'll be a little bit like Ali'i. You'll wait until round 17 to probably grab him, but if he's still 800k there, you just buy him. He's going to be gun and hell. Him and Papali'i will probably be the top 2 edges for the year, as I put down here.
Yeah.
And with the duel, it makes him enticing.
Yeah, well, both won't miss a game for the rest of the season, which is lovely. And potential guys that we can move on for them. Obviously, we've got a few guys scoring well in the Elliots, Maxi King, Nat Butchers. There's a few guys that you could straight swap them to. The King one will be interesting if he keeps getting the 60 minutes. Do you actually move him on? Potentially, I think if you have extra trades, yes, but if not, it might just be worth holding Maxi. What are your thoughts on King in general?
He's really come good since he's moved to the starting role. I think you have to kind of keep him because he's still rising in value. And then if he gets injured later, you can trade him out more expensive for one of those equivalent guns. instead of sort of losing a little bit out now, who's for somebody who's not quite as expensive and still scoring similar. So I think there's no real reason to move him on.
That's fair. Just generally around, obviously we're going through the best of the best here, right? We have a few guys on the fringes, and if you're owning a bunch of those guys, yes, they might average a couple of points less, but we're looking to create the best 17, 18, for cover that you can possibly get, right? And I think the big thing we should actually mention here is if you feel like you've got a guy that's sort of covering at the moment, you might have a Kohler, whether it be a Taylor May or something like that, who probably is going to be 10 to 15 points under these top guns. I think it would be better off for you to trade them to a top tier guy, whether it's Tedesco or something, if you're looking at the back, then looking to really get these top guys in the edges. Like Madison will score 55 to 60, right? But if you have these Olakauatus who might be a 53 point score or something like that 5 or so points a week is obviously going to be less important than trying to make up compared to getting that 10 to 15. So like you were mentioning before about trying to make that bigger trade up, that's probably another thing to mention as well while we're going through these positions, because we got honourable mention here: Frizzell, Young, Olakauatu, which are all solid options, and just fix up some other positions if you can. Anything on those three you want to talk about?
Frizzell's HIA opens up a can of worms, because if anybody jumped on him, you're upset. But now he's going to be even cheaper, and because he's not in the Origin squad for Origin 2, it makes him less likely to sort of be around for Origin 3 unless there's injuries. So he's looking a little more likely to play round 17 now. And if you look at his stats, he's actually pretty much a mid-50s scorer as well, or low to mid-50s, and he's quite a lot cheaper than Madison and Papali'i, and plays round 17 if he's not selected in the team. So he could be really somebody, like you were discussing, 100, 150k less to bring in and upgrade somebody else to get that 10, 15 points difference over a Tunga or a Kula or a May or somebody like that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And he's someone who's done it for years, right? So definitely wouldn't be a stretch to be like, oh, I'm going for a pod, but I'm not sure. Whereas that he's going to be somewhere in that mid-50s, could sometimes get 60s as well. So anything on like Olakauatu, which is not someone I've spoken about a lot, but he's really come on leaps and bounds this year.
Yeah, he's one of those players that just looks like he's going to have a breakout game and absolutely smash it, and he finally has started doing that. If Manly can sort of help him continue to do that, he'll be absolutely great. I think his 3-round average is nearly 70 or something like that.
With the tries,
with the tries though, he's got to sort of keep getting that in order to reach those top tier guys and reel them in. Otherwise, he sort of just falls back to the pack of the 6, 7, 8 that are sort of all borderline 50, 51 sort of players.
Yeah, I suppose he's one of those guys that can do it. He has that kick-out kind of scoring ability, but a lot more in base, which makes him a bit of a better option. All right, let's move to the halves. Probably not too much to go through here. We've obviously got our clear top guys, but a couple of fringe ones as well, which we'll get you to speak about. We got Cleary up top. We will mention that Hines could be used in this position as well. He actually has the highest average, but definitely a lot of good halves and probably a few less wing fullbacks as to why we will actually speak about him down there. Cleary, we don't really have to say much about him. If you don't have him, as you said, best buy in round 18 or 19. They may rest him. They are at the top of the table, so that's something to think about. But you will need to get him in. The head-to-head team, for example, doesn't have him, but I will be targeting him for sure as a must-have. And now we can talk about Munster and DCE. Go for it.
Yeah, these two are a coin flip, in all honesty. And the only reason why I've got on Munster here is because he's looked in absolutely insane form this year and just threatening to go on one of those massive big games where he'll score a 90, like DCE can sometimes do in past years. With Manly down this year compared to last, and Munster up this year, and Munster's sort of had a quiet week or two, bringing his price down below DCE's very soon, I would lean slightly towards him. But it's really a coin flip between Munster and DCE, because DCE last year in round 14, backing up from Origin, scored 120. So either of the two could go absolutely massive.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense, actually, with how well they were going last year, Manly, Tommy, the two of them going nuts. I definitely think that I agree with the Munster call. Just with Storm aren't going as well as last year, but they're going better than Manly are. Similar average. Both should play the rest of the year. Munster, but maybe potential for being held off in that last game, being rested compared to DCE with Manly sort of fighting for the 8.
Yeah.
Probably the only thing to think about. You want to talk about Fogs as well, so.
Fogarty, I sort of had half an eye on him for a while and then forgot before finding him again last week. He's down in the low 600s, but if you look at his stats in 2020, he averaged just about 50. And in 2021, in uninjured games, he averaged nearly 60, but that was at the Titans, who are very inconsistent and can get smashed at any given week. The Raiders are starting to get a bit of a roll on. He's had a quiet game or two to bring his price down after a long injury layoff. I think it was like a 34 and a 47 before. He's hit form the last 2 weeks with a 57 and a 55. Now, he hasn't come out and absolutely smashed it with a 60 plus or a 70 that really makes you want to jump on. But if you a little bit down in the ranks like I am at the moment, sort of 2,000-3,000, and want somebody to sort of boost you up just as you're coming in as a sort of a Hail Mary option, he could be your guy. He doesn't play 17, but with that potential point scoring ability and so much cheaper, he could be a real interesting shout.
I can't believe that people are going to listen to two blokes that are ranked 2,000. But anyway, we'll go first. And we've got Dillbags Brown and Jerome Hughes. We've had our chats about Brown plenty. Let's talk about. I want to hear your thoughts on Hughes. We obviously saw him last night yesterday afternoon play incredible, and shows his value in any team. How amazing he is. But let's just quickly talk about Hughesy there.
Yeah, I've been flip-flopping on him a little bit, whether I like him or I really don't. Before last night, I was probably going to say not. He, under these slower rules, compared to last year's 6 again, where everything was run. He had an opportunity to do a lot of damage and score really, really well last year. And he's kind of been a little more restricted this year and hasn't really shone, even through the Origin when we thought he sort of might. And we're halfway through that and he hasn't really gone massive. Last night, however, showed when he's on, he can just do whatever he wants. Yeah. So if you're wanting somebody for round 17 out of Dylan Brown and Hughes, I'd probably go Hughes just because Brown has kind of been a little bit disappointing lately, been scoring a lot of sort of 40s to go with his odd 50 or 60 and just sort of bringing him down a little bit.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm hit and miss on Brown. I personally wouldn't be bringing him in. Hughesy, I feel like if you're wanting to take a risk, then he could be a guy, right? Because he has averaged, he's had stretches of averaging 70 and stuff. So, that could be the way to go. If you rank 10,000, need a bit of a risk. He's obviously really cheap, right? A lot cheaper than Brown is. So that could be a guy. All right, let's move to the centres. We have a clear topic in Matty Burton. We both decide that, you need him at some point, 100%. Yeah, and he could be a gun in the half position as well. Burton, clear topic. Best buy was, it could be round 16. Obviously, them not playing in 17. What do you say about that? It is true that he's not playing around 17, but he's scoring so well that, as you can see, his last 3 averages pretty much 70. He's still climbing. He's been scoring well for 5 weeks, and he's still climbing. If you get him in round, if you wait another week, he could be 860 or a little bit more. It's with centre being the lowest scoring position. If you have Burton at centre, then he scores you a 60 or a 65 compared to, say, a Tunga or even like a Joey Manu or Campbell Graham or something scoring you a 45. That's 15 extra points just from the round before round 17. So that's almost like a free 15 points in round 17 plus saving that little bit of cash over playing somebody else. It's a great point. Yeah, that's what. Yeah, you're looking. That's why we're in this final 17. We're looking at the clear top guys in each position because if they do score up, if it's 10, 15 points above the next guy, which is exactly what this position is, it's obviously super valuable. So if anyone has picked him up the last few weeks, even leading up to round 17, him not playing, obviously has been a godsend. If you got the Cook, who's absolutely dominating up top, and you've got Burton. Those two guys, it seems to be you're in the top 500, top 1,000. So super important. Great point there. Lockie, Aiken, you want to mention about him?
Aitken's only just staving off a very large and close chasing pack, but he's had a couple of HIAs in there, which if he hadn't, he'd probably be over 50. I think his most recent score is like a 38 in like 57 minutes, which puts him on track, a low 50 sort of a thing, or mid-50s, like he's been sort of regularly scoring. And because of those couple of low scores, including that HI, he's actually about 50k cheaper than a lot of those other options who are around him, like Manu and things like that. I think Manu's about 690.
Yeah.
So Aitken, if you haven't got him, I'd buy him around 18 because he hasn't got the round 17. They have the buy. But because he's a little bit cheaper and he's still averaging more than them, it's pretty easy to choose Aitken at the moment.
Fair. And anyone who's looking to sell him at the moment? No?
I probably wouldn't. The only person you would sell him at would be Burton, but I mean that's still wasting a keeper. And if you have three keepers there, you're still wasting one and sort of bench cover.
Yeah, I agree. If you've got him at number 2 in this list, then it'd be silly to trade him out, right? We've been speaking about it for a while. 48.5 average is always amazing for centers. You got Burton there doing his thing, but 48 is pretty incredible. And then the other guys here, if you wanted to go against the grain of Aitken, you'd try for a Manu, a Graham, Lomax, Ramian, Talakai, these type of players. All pretty similar, would you say?
Yeah. Reasonably similar. I think I was going to say, and I accidentally trapped a lot of people last week. I said buy Talakai because the Sharks draw is ridiculously good towards the end of the season, but the Sharks are trying to turn into the Eels and underwhelm expectations, and he drops even more. The one I do like out of that pack is Campbell Graham, because when Latrell Mitchell returns, he used to be left centre and goes left side, strong side. Campbell Graham could get some more attacking stats and go really big. He could move into that second best with round 17 potential eligibility as well. Yep. So if you want to go somebody and you don't have Aitken or Campbell Graham, you might even want to go Campbell Graham. But at the moment, as it stands, I like Aitken as the second best.
Yeah, safest, right, in the second row. And then Manu, if there's an injury to Teddy, then Manu would be clear top choice, I'd say. The rest are kind of just okay, right? All right, we got 4 minutes to go. Let's do the wing fullbacks. So Heinze, clear top pick. And then we've got a few interesting ones with our superstar players. We actually get at decent prices, to be honest. So just over a 50 average we're paying for with Teddy and Pap. So let's go for when would be best to get Teddy, because we're going to want him, right?
Yeah, we're absolutely going to want Teddy. He always starts slow. And as you can see, in round 6, he started firing and he scored over 83 times. He scored plenty of 60s and he's ballooned in price. I think he's got a hard game this week, and they have a decent turnaround in round 18. So against the Knights, he could go big. So you might want to buy him then instead of round 19.
Cool. Good chat. Yeah,
but I'd buy him sooner rather than later.
Awesome. And Pap?
He's really hard to predict because I heard and read from the NRL physio that I think it's the medial in his knee. Players who have a decent injury to the medial can have a slow comeback, but being out, I think it was with COVID plus the extra week with the rep round, that's really going to help his recovery, and he might just come out firing the next couple of rounds. So he could be an option for round 17 to really solidify your wing fullback sort of run home.
Yeah, I personally don't see him making Origin. What do you reckon about that?
I think with New South Wales loves fullbacks, and with Hines floating around there and Burton floating around there, I just don't think he needs to be the 14 or even the 18. But we will see. 18 is probably more of a worry at this stage, but we'll just have to see.
Yeah, and I suppose we'll know by round 17 anyway, so we can make that decision then. And then honourable mentions, I suppose we've got Garrick and Drinkwater, and really the Garrick one, would you say if you do own him, you could put him as one of the top, pretty close to one of the top 3? Has that opportunity to score as well? Like if you have him, you could include him?
If you have him, I wouldn't necessarily go really hard for that third gun, because he can be that third gun and only lose a point or two. And you're laughing all the way to the bank if you picked him up pretty early. He's being absolutely fantastic for people at fullback. He scores well there, and with Turbo gone for the year, he's set to stay there. I think he'll be the fourth highest behind Teddy and Pappenhausen, but if he does overtake one of them, it wouldn't be the most massive surprise in the world, especially if Pappenhausen is a slow start back.
Yeah.
But, I mean, yeah, he can be one of those three if you want to upgrade in other areas.
Drinky a bit more risky, we'd say. He seems to go like 60 odd, then like 15. But Cowboys playing really well, so up the Cows.
Cowboys playing well, and there's always that slight worry that the bench is going to be moved around. Remember earlier in the season where Hammer was in the bench, and they used to rotate who subbed off for Hammer with 15 minutes to go, and that can hurt water.
Surely that's gone now, right? Surely.
Oh, you'd hope so. Well. Yeah, he's been good. I wouldn't buy him as a top guy anymore, but if you have him, I'd hold on to him. Well, probably for the year, especially as your fourth wing fullback keeper. But if you do have him, I would consider more strongly going for this gun three backline than if you had Garrick instead.
There you go. That was awesome, mate. Appreciate that, Mr. Scoop, for everyone who knows him in the Discord. Appreciate all you've done in that Discord, for one. And, yeah, guys, let me know in the comments in the Discord. Show some love for Lockie for being in here. I know I really appreciate this. And no matter what, even if you guys didn't like it that much, he's going to be on here more regularly. As a weekly show would be fun. But thanks so much, Lockie. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Jamie. It was great.
That's good stuff. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. We'll catch you in the next few videos. I can't believe we had a week off. It's been a bit strange, but good luck to the Blues tonight. I think we should see a 1-1 heading into round 3. Do you agree, Lockie, Mr. Queenslander?
No. What is Freddie doing? Queensland sweep.